Kisumu Governor Peter Anyang Nyong'o issued one of the most detailed and historically grounded warnings to come from what then ODM senior leadership in years, using a lengthy public statement on Sunday, March 8, 2026, to call on the party to reconnect with the founding principles that gave it life for 2 decades ago. Anyang Nyong'o published the statement via his official Facebook account, framing his intervention not as that of a casual observer, but as someone who was physically present at ODM's birth. He identified himself as one of the party's pioneer founder and its first secretary general, and said that silence at this particular moment in the party's history would itself be a betrayal of everything ODM has built to represent. The statement was one of his most direct and extensive on the state of the party since internal tensions began escalating in late 2025. Nyongo traced ODM origin directly to 2005 constitutional referendum. He called that the early 2000s Kenya had a multi-party elections in form, but the presidency remained overbearing in practice, resistance to accountability, and deeply centralized in its structure. He argues that the orange symbols adopted during the referendum was not a party logo, but a national statement, a collective refusal to accept a constitutional framework designed to preserve executive dominance and delay genuine political reforms. He described ODM as a product of historical necessity rather than election or electoral opportunism, formed to give voice to a national awakening that demanded structural change. The governor highlighted the role ODM played in delivering the 2010 Constitution of Kenya, a document he described as having dismantled the culture of every centralized presidency that had long shaped Kenya's political competition. He pointed to the devolution as one of the most significant outcomes of that struggle, noting that it was designed to distribute power and resources across counties rather than concentrate them at the center. He said that the party's identity and legitimacy was inseparable from that reform journey. Nyongo urged ODM to remain a vigilant force, defending the constitution, protecting devolution, nurturing democracy, and building a nationalism that rises above ethnic division without erasing ethnic identity. He warned that a political movement decline to when they are defeated at the ballot, but when they forge the purpose for which they were established. He told the party that abandoning the moral vocabulary of the reform would make ODM indistinguishable from the forces it once opposed. Nyongo addressed the question of generational succession within the party, saying that internal competition among leaders should be seen as a sign of political vitality, not instability. He argues that young leaders questioning old assumptions are not rebelling but renewing the institution. At the same time, he cautioned that generational change must be allowed to erase the institutional memory or the ideological foundation that the party was built on. He made it clear that there was a difference between renewal and abandonment. The statement did not merge in isolation. It came at the height time of a deepening crisis that has split ODM into two political visible factions, each operating its own political platform, each holding separate rallies, and each drawing from different ideological well. One side of the emerging divide are reforms-focused figures led by Nyongo and Siaya Governor James Orengo, the veterans of the Kenya's constitutional battle who have insisted that the movement must remain anchored in its founding principles. On the other side is the camp around the ODM party leader Oburu Odinga, which has increasingly opened channels for cooperation with President William Ruto and the United Democratic Alliance ahead of the 2027 general election. Vihiga Senator Godfrey Osotsi publicly backed both Nyongo and Orengo, accusing unnamed leaders of abandoning the party's ideologies. Osotsi remarks followed Orengo's own declaration made during a rally in Kakamega that he would henceforth take political direction on party matters from ODM Secretary General Edwin Sifuna. A statement read widely as a signal of loyalty to the anti-coalition faction inside the party. Oburu Odinga, on his part, maintained publicly that ODM was united and that descendants within the party constitute a minority whose voices would not override the collective direction of the majority. He reiterated that anyone who wished to remain in ODM would be required to operate within the party's rules and that no individual would be allowed to twist the party into following a personal political agenda. Nyong'o's warning on March 8th was consistent with a position he had been building since at least January 2026, when he used Raila Odinga's 81st birthday to frame the late founder as the leader of principle over convenience, drawing an implied moral contrast with the current dynamics inside ODM as the party began its engagement with President Ruto's administration. On February 27, 2026, ahead of the party's National Delegates Conference slated for March 27, Nyongo also issued a public call for unity and mutual respect within the party, urging leaders and members to remain steadfast in the core values of the democracy, inclusivity, and social justice as the question of who held authority to converge the NDC remain a point of active legal and political dispute.